Welcome to our discussion on revolved models. And what I wanted to ask you to get us started is what do you think? Do you think it'd be possible to model the basic shape of this using the tools you already understand and know how to use? For example, you know how to extrude. So could you make the basic shape of our little stacked cake here, our wedding cake, with extrusions? You don't have to worry about the frosting and the lacy looking stuff. I'm just talking about something like this. Would that be possible to do with extrude? What do you think? Well, if you said yes, you're right. You could do this with extrude. All right, so let's talk about it. We could hop over onto model space. We could draw a circle with a 6-inch radius. And we could draw a circle with a 4-inch radius. And we could draw a circle with a 2-inch radius. And we could draw a circle with a 1-inch radius. Right. And you know all about extrude. So you can go in there and you can pull this guy up nice and tall. And then you could pull up the next one nice and tall, and the next one, and the next one, and we could create this basic shape and this basic idea with 4 extrusions. Or maybe if you didn't like that, you would start off with the lowest level, just like a baker, right? And pull it up, and then maybe we go in and draw another circle top of it, because you can do that, right? We could go to the center and draw a second circle and extrude that one up. Okay, and build one on top of the other. So the fact is, yes, you could do this. Okay, this is not an impossible task with the technology that we have. But it's not the easiest way to make a shape like this, because this shape is kind of special. This shape is called a revolved shape. If that's the first time you've heard that term, revolved, that's okay. Revolving allows you to make shapes that are not possible to make with extrusion. For example, the baseball bat here. This shape has an axis going through it, and it has the same curve and profile all the way around, making it revolve shape. Okay, you can't extrude this. There's no way to make this with extrusion. The curvy parts of these balustrades too for a railing, same idea. It would be impossible to make the curvy parts with extrusion. Or on this poured concrete section of rail, right? The parts down here. I could extrude the rail on the top. I could extrude the base on the bottom. I could even extrude the top and bottom for the plinth on the column and the support, but not the curvy part. The bases of columns, right? The square part could be extruded, but not the curvy part. So here's the basic idea. You could take a tool called a lathe, and a lathe spins around a piece of wood or a piece of metal and allows you to carve a revolved design into that piece of wood or metal. So we think about like a chair leg, right? That would be an example of this, or any of those other things we just looked at. Here's a lathe in operation. We see the metal is spinning on the left side in a chuck, and a cutter goes in, and then one pass at a time carefully removes material, creates some cool looking little chips, and then when we're done, we get the final shape we were looking for. These are all revolved shapes, meaning they have an axis of revolution through their center, and they have the same contour all the way around. Okay, so the term revolve refers to the tool, a lathe, which revolves a piece of stock so that it can be cut into a different shape. There are other manufacturing processes that mirror this too. Think about glass work. Have you ever seen anyone blowing glass? Like making something out of glass? They heat it up on the end of a tube, right? A piece of glass, a big chunk of glass, and then they spin it and blow into it. And as they're doing that, it creates the hollow of the glassware. Okay, so these are all shapes that are not possible to be made with extrusion, but can easily be made with a revolving process. Even the sphere. You can't extrude a sphere, but you could take a circle and spin it around and turn it into a solid. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to talk about how do you do that? How can we accomplish this? And let's talk about using a new modeling tool in AutoCAD to get this done. So the modeling tool is not going to be Extrude. It's going to be the tool right next to Extrude. It's called Revolve. Okay? And probably the best way to start working with it is we are going to think about what's the shape we're trying to get and what do we need to draw. So looking again at our wedding cake here, what's the shape we're looking for? Well, it looks like 4 steps, right? And on the other side, it looks like 4 steps coming down. But the reality is we don't need that whole shape. We only need half of it. Okay? And by half, here's what I mean. I mean, draw a line down through the center. Draw a line down through the center, and then draw half of the shape you want. Because think about it, that shape is going to spin around, right? So we don't need to draw the whole thing. And actually, if you try to draw the whole thing, it'll mess you up. So with a polyline, let's start drawing. And don't worry about sizes so much, just let's work with the concept. Let's make 4 steps, right? And if you have to go back, that's fine. We just want to create a closed polyline that defines half the shape we're looking for. Okay, and then sometimes what I like to do is I like to add a center line. Center line is a good thing to have because it reminds you of what you're going to use for your axis. So this is half of the shape of the wedding cake, and this here is the axis. I'm going to spin that shape around. Okay, and then looking at it in 3D, we'll be able to fully appreciate this. I'm going to make a copier 3. I'm going to go to my 3D tools and I'm going to revolve. I'm going to take that shape there, enter, and then it asks what axis do you want to revolve around. So that means I need 2 clicks. I'm going to click here, and I'm going to click here, and do you see what I'm getting? Yeah, so it's going to create a 3D solid using that profile and spinning it around that axis. So I'll just hit enter because the default revolution is 360 degrees. And hey, there's my wedding cake. Pretty fancy, right? Now, if it's in the wrong orientation, that's fine. Just turn on your rotate gizmo and then you can stand it up. And the idea is this is less work, right? Because before it took 4 different circles and 4 different extrusions to create the wedding cake. What did this one take? Well, it took 1 profile, 1 axis, and 1 revolution. So it's a better way to work if we're creating shapes that have a revolve profile. I'm going to copy a few of these. Because I want to show you that revolution is really a powerful tool. Making a revolve is a really powerful way to model. That's the object I want to revolve. That's the axis I'm going to revolve it around. Okay, and we get this for our result. Now, check it out. Imagine I took my axis and I moved it. Okay, instead of revolving around this edge here, I'm going to revolve it along that back edge there. Will I get the same result? Let's take a look. See, I get kind of the same thing, but different sizes because now it has a different axis. Okay, and then think about what if I took my axis of revolution? What if I rotated it up here? Right? What if that was my axis? So I'll revolve that shape along this axis. Whoa, that's massively different, right? It's still got steps, but now they are going in. They're concave. Cool. And now, if I took that axis, and again, I just love doing this, so I'm going to make a couple more copies. What would happen if I took this and I rotated the axis at 45 degrees? Right, 45 degrees. And we'll do an REV, revolve. We'll revolve on these 2 points for the axis. Now that's cool, right? That's something totally new and different. So the axis is critical to the final product. All of these use the same exact profile, but we're getting massively different results by varying the location of the axis. Now here's another one. This time though, I'm going to move the axis. I'm going to move it away from the object. Okay, now think about this. It's still going to revolve, but it's going to revolve using that as the axis. What do you think is going to happen when it's done? Am I going to get the same result that I got here? Let's see. Okay, so now this time, there's a big hole in the middle. Well, why is that? Well, because the axis was not touching the edge of the profile. So it leaves a gap. Alright, so that's a revolve with a space between the axis and the profile. So revolve is a very cool tool. Lots of awesome stuff we can make out of it. Why don't we play around a little bit with this, okay? Why don't you go in and let's see if we can make some stuff using revolve. Okay, how about this thing? Could you make this thing using the revolve command? So if you want to, you can pause, you can take a look at this, and you can give it your best, and let's see, what do you have to do in order to get a revolve that looks like this? Again, don't worry about size, just let's work with the basic concept here. Okay, so remember, you're going to want to use polylines, okay? And you're going to want to look at the shape. You're going to want to try to imagine, what does half of this shape look like? And where is the axis in relation to the object? So if you're kind of drawing a little bit of a blank, that's okay. How about something like this? This is the center of the revolve, the axis. There'll be a gap between the axis and the edge of the hole. That's the edge of the hole. Then there's a small raised section, a depressed section, and a larger raised section. So it looks like the letter I sideways, right? All right, let's try that. I'm going to set up my profile. And again, not worrying too much about actual sizes. Focus on concept. We'll get the precision and the exactness of it later on once I get the basic idea down. I'm going to set up center line for my axis. I'll put it over here. Right, and is that what we're looking for? Pretty much. And then what's going to happen when we do our revolve? Always like to look at this stuff in 3D. REV, revolve that polyline around that axis, and then there we go. Okay, so now you should know that right now it's asking for how much revolution do you want? 360, 180, 90. You can revolve as many degrees as you want. The default is 360. But if you say, give me 180, well, you get half of the revolve, right? And if you gave it a different number, well, then you would get whatever angle you asked for. But I'm going to go in there and say, give me a 360 revolve on that axis. And that sets me up for my first model. All right, looks good. How about this thing? What do you think? It's kind of like a piston, right? What do you suppose would be necessary in order to revolve this shape? So look carefully. We see the outside shape is pretty easy to identify. Think about where the axis is. And think too about the inside. See, the inside of this is hollow, right? So what do you think we need to draw?